they make it very clear that they tried with the telecommunication industry with the 5G toolbox, which a number of countries have implemented. All countries agreed to implement the 5G toolbox. Some countries have not. Spain, for instance, they made the law, been approved in the parliament, been approved in the Senate, but decide not to implement it. So
was that a statement, or they just haven't got round to it?
No, that's the Spanish government is very much in the pocket of Chinese. So
contentious.
Yes.
Hello and welcome to another Telecoms.com podcast. I'm still getting used to the new alignment we've got in the studio. For anyone listening, you're not missing out on anything. We've just moved around about 90 degrees around the table.
Well, if they were watching, they wouldn't even tell anyway because it's the walls on.
The walls are just grey felt anyway.
On them.
It means that we don't have to clamber over Pierre anymore, which is something. Although I think he's going to miss that. I think you secretly quite like that.
He had a nice corner there.
You can hear a perhaps familiar voice. We're delighted to welcome back special guest John Strand, the legend that is.
Oh my God!
He's probably been on more than anybody now.
I was trying to think, like those sort of boxing intros or Rocky. Trying to think of something alliterative with Danish. Like the Danish Danger Man or something like that. Anyway, whatever.
Anyhow,
I can't think of anything. Great to have you back with your Denmark cufflinks, as ever. Yeah. And you've flown over especially. I'm sure you had some other shit to do as well.
Yes, I had. But cool. I said, listen, we booked this, and then I said, fine, then I do the other meetings.
Yeah,
so
cool. Well, it's great to see you, mate. So before we get into chatting to John about John stuff, is there any opening bollocks? We stayed out a bit later than we intended to last Friday, didn't we? How were you feeling the next day? Were you all right?
I was all right. I was just a bit tired.
I just thought, we went out. We met up with some friends from Computer Weekly, and then Carl, who's been on the pod, came out for a bite to eat with us.
Yeah.
And I was all like, well, why don't we just... Carl was like, I'm calling it a day there. 'Cause Carl doesn't really drink very much. I think he was feeling it a little bit. If you're listening, Carl. I think he was feeling it a bit by the end. And then, as ever, the two of us were like, let's be sensible. It's like, 9:30 or something. Call it a night. Like, fuck. We went to the Ring and had a few more.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. Like you, I wasn't particularly hungover, just a bit knackered. But that was all good fun. And it was such a lovely day. We got to sit in the beer garden with colleagues.
Nice to see Carl, because we hadn't seen him for a while as well. So.
And Carl's been reading my book. Did you know I'd written a book, audience? Identity Crisis, available on all good
Well, he was very
Amazons.
positive about your book. He had lots of feedback and comments.
I know what I was saying.
He was very engaged.
It is a weird thing. It's the one and only bit of non-fiction writing I've ever done. Certainly the only novel I've ever written.
No, fiction writing.
Sorry, fiction writing, yeah.
You do lots of non-fiction writing.
Yes, exactly.
Hopefully.
I got them the wrong way around. No, didn't you know? I just make up everything that I write on Telecoms.com. And it is interesting. And obviously, not tons of people read it, and that's fine. But it is interesting how few people who had read it, even people who quite liked it, wanted to talk to me about it. I kind of assumed that people would be like, oh, what did you mean by this? Or stress test some of the shit that I was writing in it. But Carl did, which is quite fun.
Yeah.
So thanks, Carl. But I think that's all I've been up to this week. Yeah. What about you, Ian?
I went out on a work trip, only in another part of London, but did get out of the house. Went to Wembley Stadium, the famous Wembley Stadium, home of football, apparently. Although someone there was saying that he doesn't believe the English invented football. But
oh, right. Who did that?
Well, I don't know. He didn't have an alternative. He was a Frenchman who said it. So,
okay.
What can you expect?
Bloody uppity Frenchman. By the way, Pierre's officially, he's like, you went to the ceremony and got officially signed in as a Brit now,
I'm officially a Brit, yeah. That's right.
I was joking before we started that he's already getting shitter at cooking since he's become English.
England's greatest signing, if you ask me.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, and you were there.
So it was, the reason was BT having an announcement, which I think the Telegraph sort of got the scoop on it before, which
at least one part
spoiled the news. I haven't actually read I've seen the headlines of the Telegraph story. I hadn't actually read the main story because you have to have it's paywalled. You have to go out and buy the physical copy, and nobody does that anymore, obviously. So I haven't seen the story, but their headline kind of made the point that they're reintroducing the BT brand, which is sort of gone out of.
Well, you don't need to don't
well,
need to
we can
elaborate
talk
too much
about that.
because we're gonna. I think it's worth talking about at greater
Yeah.
length.
But the event itself was quite. I mean, it's quite nice to sort of see Wembley when it's not being used for a football match because you sort of get a sense of the size of it. I think
It's-
almost in the
it's an
way
impressive
that you
stadium.
don't when there's people in it. It almost makes it look smaller when there's
Well,
people
and
there,
you're
but-
too busy rushing about.
and you're rushing about.
Yeah.
But it's a really impressive stadium, and I mean they obviously attaching quite a lot of importance to what they had to say because they had Alison Kirkby there as well as
and
all
Greg
of the kind of
McCall and so on.
Greg on the sort of network side and the other kind of top guys. And then they had they promised like there'd be some famous footballers there as well. I hate to say I didn't actually really know the famous footballers. They were women footballers, and that's my own ignorance of not watching a lot of women's
You're bad.
football. But I didn't really.
Don't you remember
Yeah.
that
It's
time?
just because they don't exchange polos after the match.
Do you remember that time when we watched a women's European championship game with Adam from VMO2?
Yeah, I see. If they've been, because I think women's football's become more popular recently. It's more televised more now. But the person who was sort of doing the Q&A, the Lionesses, but the lady they had who was doing the Q&A, because she's now like a podcaster and in broadcasting herself.
Right.
And I can't even remember her name, and even now that I'm mentioning her, but she sort of retired back in 2014, I think. So it's at a time when there wasn't any women's football on, really. I don't think.
Was it Rachel Yankee?
It was Rachel Yankee. I just
found your
it.
story.
There
Yeah.
you are.
Oh, you've even got linked to her.
Well, I didn't do that. The copy edit team did, but that's why we have such brilliant copy edit.
Oh, do you? Oh, I have to do my own fucking hyperlinks.
Yeah, well,
There we are. She was a dazzling winger
yeah.
with pace and skill to boot.
So I was told by our copy editor that she was quite a rare specimen in that she sort of dribbled it around people and did all sorts of tricky stuff, which you don't see a lot of in football generally, I don't think, these days.
Oh, she was at Arsenal women,
passing
Pierre.
game.
I've gone off her.
We have the best women's team. We do.
There you are. Well, the best men's team as well at the moment.
Indeed. You're into the cup final, the Champions League final.
I know.
Are you scared?
Yeah.
And what
And they're playing against PSG.
don't wanna get
playing
hurt.
against
I don't wanna
bloody
get hurt
French people.
So whatever happens, Pierre wins.
No, he doesn't care about France. He's renounced it.
Yeah.
He wouldn't know a bulb of garlic if you threw it at his head.
But you're from Bretagne, so you're not supporting Paris. So
No, I'm not from Bretagne.
He's
I'm
from
the north.
Bas de
Oh,
Calais.
sorry.
Is it Bas? Pa?
Pa.
Pa.
It's just called Le Nord.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Right.
The
Well,
north.
that's not, you need a bit more than that. You can't just
Yeah,
call it the North.
they used to call it. I mean, it
I used to call it Normandy, which used to annoy
you call
you.
it-
Something like
region of
Game of
the-
Thrones.
Yeah,
Yeah, King of the North.
King of the North.
And I guess for that metaphor, the English Channel's like the wall, and we're White Walkers, which is appropriate enough. If you look at English people walking
Yeah, that's
around
true.
in May, we tend to be white.
Well, they're either red or white.
Yeah, pink walkers. Anyway, we digress. So we're going to talk about that in general. I was also invited. I blew it out
Couldn't be asked.
for two reasons. Well, yes, apart from my general incredible lethargy. I blew it out for two things. Firstly, it was like first thing in the morning at Wembley Stadium, bit of a schlep. But I would have done it if I thought the news was big enough. But when they started talking about inviting footballers and that sort of thing, I figured it was a brandy, marketing-y, consumer-y, fluffy sort of thing. And I just thought, I'm just not sure I need to be there for it. And
I think it was less fluffy than I thought it was going to be.
well, that's what. So, and we wrote about it, obviously not having attended, but Mary wrote about it, and she was a little bit. I think she used the word underwhelmed about the BT Mobile thing, but it's all the better to have someone who's actually there, and we'll talk about it.
I'm not saying I disagree with her take, and you were saying before we came in, you're not really sure, and I could totally go along with all of that. But I can also see reasons why Alison Kirkby might want to do this, and why there's a bit of concern about the perception of telcos generally. You know, like you look at them compared with other like very successful brands like Apple or Nike or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I think when we get into it, I think that branding side is an interesting, broader chat to have. The other joke I made to Ian, I stress this is a joke, is I said to him, this is the only time they invite me to a stadium.
Well, now
Ian having been invited to the rugby once or twice.
we need to
not
stay
me.
friendly with BT because they've got that was the other news, that they've got the connectivity provider deal, which is always going to be the case anyway because they're incumbent. But
maybe I've already burnt my bridges.
Euro 2028. Couple of matches,
in case you're
maybe.
wondering,
That'd be brilliant.
Well, in case you're wondering, BT, I'd still prefer rugby than football myself. Anyway,
That's fine. I take your seat.
yes,
Yeah.
I'll defer it to Pierre. International football's shit, man.
No.
Generally rubbish.
I mean, in a tournament.
Yeah, generally the games are dull, the score lines are low, everyone's risk averse, the players aren't familiar with each other.
Brazil, Germany, was that a low score?
There are some obviously exceptions to the rule.
I mean, I just find that true of football generally. There's dull matches and exciting. You're not really into football anyway. You only support them to annoy your friends. You picked the bad team at the moment because they're going to end up in a shitty league.
Well, indeed. Then I'll like football even less if Spurs get relegated.
Well, they are relegated, aren't they? I think it's done now.
No.
Is it not?
No,
they've still got
between
one
them and
chance.
West Ham.
Right, they've got one chance.
The thing is that the funny thing is Arsenal is playing West Ham.
Yeah. So Arsenal can do Spurs a favour by
Right.
Spurs
West
will be
Ham.
cheering on for Arsenal.
I thought it was a done deal, but okay.
No, I think we're 1 point clear of them. Obviously, it's still
I think
sad that we're there.
Blackburn have narrowly avoided being relegated from the Championship.
You still keep half an eye on Blackburn, do you?
Yeah, and I know that they're safe now.
Right, okay.
Just
All right.
by about 2 points or something.
Anyway, enough tangent. We will get back to that BT thing and discuss it fully. As well
as more football.
As well as more football. Is there more football?
I don't know, not really, but everybody loves football, don't they? That's a tangent you can go off on and everybody will just sort of listen to you all
Ian,
day.
you've just teed up a perfect riposte for me. Ian, this is a Telecoms podcast. We can't talk about anything other than fucking RAN, or it's not the podcast. This is me winding up. Ian gets a bit grumpy when I go off-piste sometimes. So I got to throw that back at him just there.
I don't know.
Fair enough, touche.
Yeah, it's a touche. But John is a telecoms analyst, so we got half a chance of staying on track. Although it's got to be said, John, and I don't want to prejudge anything that you fancy talking about, but quite often we talk to you, and quite often I'm sure you've heard when we invoke your name when you're not here. It's in the context of sort of geopolitics, especially the attitudes towards China and that sort of thing. So I'm sure we'll get into that again. In fact, I can see that there might be one, and we can put that on the back burner because I think there were one or two other specific telecoms things that you've been studying and writing about. If anyone doesn't sign up, those newsletters we get for you, are they free for everyone? Yeah. So I'd recommend subscribing to Strand Consult's newsletters because he gives away a hell of a lot of stuff for free. He writes some really long reports that you can just get in your inbox.
Yeah, good insight.
Yeah. So we might cover any of that stuff you've written, but I do notice that Ian this week, we'll probably talk about this, you wrote a story headlined, Huawei and ZTE bans in Europe will trigger response, China warns, which is predictable but still interesting. But John, we can get straight into all that stuff, but I'll throw the ball to you. Were there any things coming into this pod that you had at the top of your mind that you fancied?
No, but I think the geopolitical part is very important, and it's become even more important every day. My clients is telecom operators across the world, so very often they come to me and say, hey, what's US policy? What's the impact? They want to know what's going on, what's happening inside the European Union, what's happening in different countries in the European Union, etc. But what I think is very interesting is also to look at these operators, new revenue streams, new clients, new things, and so on. And we see right now...
eternal problem they have.
Yeah, you could say right now we see two things. We see basically that in the past, in many countries, the first responders, the police, the fire department, etc., was using Tetra networks. And
remind us what those are.
Tetra is the walkie-talkie type with the police and so on.
It's a closed network.
It's a closed network.
Right.
It's a separate network running parallel to the mobile networks. And you could say it's basically a voice solution. Some are talking about you should add 5G on top of it, so you have the data solution on a 4G, 5G connection, and then you use Tetra for the voice
please
communication.
Can watch Netflix when they're going around.
Exactly.
They can check
Very
the football
important.
scores.
But what we see, what we see right now is...
See, it might be quite handy because they could check a certain football score and think, oh, there's going to be some aggro after that game. And then they go...
we need to run.
Be facetious.
No. So right now we see actually in a number of countries, they are basically migrating their customers, migrating the first responders from these Tetra networks, and into the mobile networks. And the way they do it, like for instance in France, they have basically built an MVNO on top of the 4 mobile networks in France. So you use the mobile operator's RAN, the mobile operator's spectrum, you have a full MVNO, and then basically you use, instead of using a Tetra terminal which costs like €1,000 or more, you use a mobile phone with a Samsung which costs €130. And then you put different kind of applications so you get the same functionality as you have in a Tetra network.
It makes sense if the network's already there.
Done a little bit differently here, wasn't it? I think he just got the contract to do the service for the police and whatever. ESN it's called, isn't it?
Yeah. So the UK is a little bit more complex way of doing things.
We've always got to be different. Drive on the wrong side of the road.
Fair enough. But in Norway, they have decided to do it on top of it. Finland, they're doing it. Sweden, they're working on doing it. In the US, they've done it for years because in US, it's a different...
FirstNet, isn't it?
FirstNet, which is run by AT.
Yeah.
And so they're running it. They don't have a monopoly. It's actually, Verizon and T-Mobile have competitive services. But what's interesting is you can lower the cost per connectivity. And you basically can get rid of parallel networks. Like if you look at the French network, it's serving right now. It's serving about 16,000 first responders, and they're migrating customers now. But they will migrate 400,000 first responders. So 400,000 first responders, instead of running on a separate network to 400,000 people, and the networks covering the whole country, you use the mobile networks infrastructure, have a MVNO on top, and then instead of buying these €1,000 devices, you buy a €130 device. So you bring down the cost, and you actually, I think there's a lot of possibilities of making new applications and services on top of the devices because we have a standard mobile platform and we can do a lot of things there. So I think this is quite...
Why weren't we using standard mobile platforms before?
Because many things. One of the, it's very fair enough.
10, 20 years ago.
No. We talk about goes even further back. So the Tetra standard was actually right now. Tetra's the main supplier of these networks is Motorola Solutions, and
it's anything that keeps them in business, probably.
They have a lot of other things, but it's a big business. But what's interesting here is that Tetra had some functionalities like it's a kind of a push to talk, but you could make group calls. So you could say, oh, all the firemen was talking to each other. You could also prioritize calls. So you could say, if the guy responsible for the fire guys wants to talk to the guy responsible for the police, who wants to talk to some kind of emergency people working on the scene of something is happening, then they could make a close group where they was communicating to each other. So you could make like... Right. So it had a lot of communication
like
functionalities.
WhatsApp groups, but for voice.
Yeah, exactly. And what's happening is basically right now they realize that you can do that functionality on top of a mobile device. So you can actually... You don't need that functionality. You have actually a technical alternative solution today. So we see this taking place. US is one example. We see UK to a certain extent, Norway, Finland. We see France. The French case, my opinion, is really interesting case.
Yeah, the MVNO model.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And it's the same model they will choose in other countries. But they will have a lot of discussions and how to do it and so on. So for me, it's
like a government MVNO, isn't it, I guess?
It's a kind of a government MVNO. Yeah. And we did a report about the military because we have been doing on top of all the mapping of the Chinese equipment. We did a report about because we believe that instead of the military use their old communication solutions, they would do exactly the same and build an MVNO on top of the mobile networks and use that for communication. Yep. And we did a report about that, and we basically made a list of countries in Europe. In Europe, you have about 100 mobile networks. 60 of them is what we will call clean networks, non-Chinese networks. So on top of that, the military can build today. But there's like 40 networks in Europe, which I don't believe the military will use, because if you have Chinese RAN in your network, I don't believe the military would like to send their communication.
So if you do this sort of MVNO model with the with the military, then they'd have to kind of cut out the networks that are using Huawei and ZTE because they're just not going to consider those as an option.
I think the day you will use those networks, that's the same day as the Air Force will buy Chinese fighter planes.
Right.
So said it very simple.
Yeah.
So I think it's basically the military have a very clear view on these things, and I think that to convince the military that you could send your communication through a Chinese network, I think it's
yeah. No, I get
the only
it.
thing I'll slightly quibble on in the way you describe it there is calling it a Chinese network, just because it's got Chinese kit in it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there can be degrees. And this comes back to this whole discussion that we've been having for about 10 years. And, back in the UK, we tried to have that bit. And I think you were just telling me before we started recording that it's been resurrected, where you could sort of ring fence the stuff that's considered risky by virtue of being Chinese, which is a discussion by itself and one we've had loads of times. You could ring fence it and just have it in the RAN and not the core, and therefore it wouldn't have so much effect. So that's my only thing. It's a bit of a quibble, but calling them Chinese networks just because they have some kit from a Chinese vendor seems like a
Chinese software. We talk about Chinese software, okay?
Yeah.
And we did a research note about S8 risk here. So the reality is that if they don't upgrade the software, or it's a time bomb inside the software, so on. So there's so many risks when we talk about these things. And I can sign like a suffering from Chinophobia or something like that. But the reality is China today is a country which considers North Korea, Iran and Russia as their friends.
I think Scott's point about the RAN and the core sort of argument, I think that's almost been laid to rest, though. I mean, the EU...
I thought John was telling me that some people are having a go at it.
No, not really. The only people who are still kind of insisting that it makes sense to keep those things separate and treat them separately, to be honest with you, are German operators who are still using Huawei. Because the whole EU position now is that you shouldn't use Huawei and ZTE anywhere, whether it's the RAN or the core. And if you talk to any of the kind of security experts who have looked at this, even Ericsson itself was saying those whole, like when 5G was coming on, the lines are blurring between the RAN and the core because you actually end up putting the UPF, which is a core network function, at your cell sites.
So it's not like you can just
there's software in the base station. You could bring down, you could potentially bring down cell site infrastructure through malware in the RAN software itself. So that whole
concept ring fencing.
The German regulator, the Bundesnetzagentur, came out with a paper, a consultation document. John knows it very well, where they'd actually originally, because whenever Timotheus Herges, Deutsche Telekom CEO, talks about this, he goes, the antenna, by which he means the base station, isn't treated as a critical element in Germany. But the recommendation in this paper was that everything in the network would be a critical element. There isn't a separation of it anymore. So.
But lately, Connect Europe, or the former Ethno, have just been out saying you have to distinguish between core and RAN. So basically, you can say there is some people trying to reintroduce that one.
So that was what
as an argument.
To, right.
So that what we have seen here during the last week or two. We see that come into the surface, and it's a little bit like, hey, I don't know any experts which agree with that argument that you can distinguish between the core and the RAN.
Yeah,
it's just in. And the management RAN management software story from Germany is even more absurd, if you could say like that. Yeah.
I mean, certainly from the perspective of authorities, they seem to think the European Union, even the way that the German regulator is looking at it, is that you have to treat everything as a sensitive element. That
I totally agree.
They still haven't quite mandated it, though, have they, John? They still haven't mandated it. They keep tiptoeing closer to mandating the toolbox.
Well, the EU wants to. The EU is mandating it.
Yeah,
it will just take time to come in. That's the problem.
The plan
now. They are mandating.
What's the problem? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
They are mandating it. That was the big announcement in January. It's going to be mandated.
Yeah. But what would you say is the problem? I didn't hear you.
It's timing. It's just getting it through. It's not law
exactly.
at the moment.
I think I remember when I saw that in January, and I think I covered it as part of a security package.
Cybersecurity Act.
And I was thinking, to the timing, does it come down to kicking the can down the road until, for example, Deutsche Telekom, which is probably the single most significant putative opponent to this, until such a time where they consider their kit to be sufficiently obsolescent?
I don't think the EU is trying to do Deutsche Telekom any favours. No. They're at odds with the German government on this.
But do you think the German government is being influenced by DT?
Yes, but I don't think the EU authorities are. The EU authorities will wag their fingers and tell Germany to get its act together and ban Chinese gear, and the German government will say
we also have the issue
they
of
don't
Spain.
want to do it because they're worried about trade.
But
trade as well. Yeah, but I bet DT's a not insignificant voice. in there.
DT has lobbied, I think, quite extensively with the German government to not have to rip out Huawei equipment. So,
but I think it's important to say that the proposal which came, Digital Security Act 2, which came out January 20. I made a very long research note about that. Going into the details, there is basically, it's not only about telecom. It's 18 industries. That's important to understand. And it's 18 industries which have critical infrastructure. Right now, we'll take like a year and a half before this get approved. Then there will be, in some industries, not in telecom, there will be a process of making all the paperwork, maybe a year, and then the companies have like a window right now on the paper. We don't know how we get watered down. 3 years to get rid of the untrusted equipment. EU don't mention the Chinese at all.
No, well, they always just say high risk or untrusted. Or
no, it's totally fair enough.
They should just say dodgy.
Yeah.
They sometimes mention them in speeches.
They do. They did that yesterday. Actually.
Yeah, so the officials will let it slip who they mean, but they don't put them down in paperwork.
And that's the sort of thing where, to the limited extent I understand Chinese culture, they would consider that a diss. One of the reasons they skirt around it is because culturally, it doesn't go down well if you confront this stuff head on.
No, but I think EU have done a huge job because they've done the risk assessment. And if you read the proposal from January 20, I think it's actually a serious type of, you can like it or dislike it, okay? But the work which is behind it is they have done a good job, okay? You can't say they've been sloppy, if you would say it like that. And so that must I say that's one thing is important. But I also think it's important when we look at it, they make it very clear that they tried with the telecommunication industry with the 5G toolbox, which a number of countries have implemented. All countries agreed to implement the 5G toolbox. Some countries have not. Spain, for instance, they made the law, been approved in the parliament, been approved in the Senate, but decided not to implement it. So
was that a statement, or they just haven't got round to it?
No, that's the Spanish government is very much in the pocket of Chinese.
So contentious.
Yes. So that's
is
the whole
why
story.
They've been giving Trump a hard time over Iran and all that?
Yeah, probably.
Nah,
but anyhow, so what's interesting here is some countries have done it, some countries have decided not to do it. There's some operators. If you look at the Chinese equipment we have today in Europe, a lot of operators understand these things. And have basically said, this is not about rip and replace. It's by stopping buying. Yeah. When you upgrade, you replace. And we have not delayed rollout in those countries where the operators have done it. We can see have not increased cost, and we can see there's a lot of things which basically, I know some people claim UK, and for instance the report the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in EU published here, I think Wednesday.
Yeah.
They claim, look at UK, it was making things more expensive and delayed it. But the reality, there's other.
Not mentioned in that story. Looking at
there's other reasons why it was like that in UK. That's because all the merger or the attempt to mergers before we come to a point. And when you're in a process of trying to merger, you don't build out your networks. Yeah. You need to know about you get approved your merger and so on.
Yeah, as I understand it, the situation in the UK at the moment is Virgin Media O2 doesn't use any, like Huawei or ZTE, because it never really did.
Yeah.
BT says, Greg McCall, interview I did with them at MWC, they've completely got Huawei out now.
Yeah.
But not out of there's still a bit of 4G stuff, but 5G, it's all kind of...
Okay.
And Vodafone 3 still got quite a lot because... As John just said, they were merging and they didn't really do it. Those sites that they were talking about using and going to Open RAN with, forget about that. Can't be bothered with Open RAN anymore. Let's give it to Ericsson and Nokia instead. Basically.
So I think it's important to say. And if you look across Europe, there's mainly two operators which are defending the use of Chinese equipment. One of them is Vodafone, and the other one is Deutsche Telekom. And I always say the reason why Deutsche Telekom do it is because Tim Höckes, their CEO, he served on the board of Mercedes-Benz, 20% of Mercedes-Benz.
Right.
owned by
I didn't know he was
Chinese.
on the board. I didn't know
He
that.
serve on the board there.
Oh, that's
And
interesting,
20%
isn't
of
it?
Mercedes-Benz ownership is Chinese.
Now I get it
and
a
a
little bit
very
more.
big,
God, even without the
very big
ownership.
part of their business are in China.
Yeah,
so
I-
Mercedes-Benz is very independent. I'm always joking when I meet people from Deutsche Telekom. I said, when your CEO is defending the Chinese, is he defending your decision inside
Yeah.
Deutsche Telekom, or he's defending Mercedes-Benz?
Well, in
bet they love
fairness,
it when you say
in
that.
fairness to him, I would say he's not been. I remember seeing him at a conference like 1 or 2 years ago. And I keep referring to this article because I thought it was interesting. He said it when he said, "If we ban Chinese antennas, don't you think there are going to be consequences for German companies trying to sell to China?" So at least he was quite honest about it. But I didn't know he was on the board of the car maker.
And the most absurd is he's also the chairman of T-Mobile USA.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that's less.
So I think...
So China's best friend in Europe, he's the chairman of the largest of the
that
second
is-
largest operator in the
That's always an
mobile
interesting
operator.
one with them sort of linked with trying to take the whole thing over
Yeah.
as well, I think. But
Well, I think that is a really interesting thing because even if I don't push back on your most hawkish positions on China, John, we have to accept that A, they're part of the world, B, they're at least the second most significant economy in the whole world. And C, they're the fucking manufacturing centre of the world. So you can't just not do business with China.
well, they were.
I think they still are.
I mean, I think they're becoming less significant for Western products that are manufactured and sold into
Because
Western
slow
countries.
decoupling.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of it's gone to Vietnam. Some of it's gone to India.
Yeah. I concede all of that.
Ericsson used to rely a lot more on Chinese assembly lines, I think, than it does now. A lot of the stuff all the stuff it sells to America. Passive components is different, but all the kind of high tech manufacturing is done in America.
But then you
So-
hear about other stuff like, I don't know, bulk pharmaceuticals or other just boring widgets and substrates
Yep.
and stuff. It really is a hell of a lot of it
I
comes
think
from there.
there's
Yeah.
so many things, and I must say the Chinese is very good at fueling the myth about how significant China is. Let's be honest.
Right. It's not totally...
A lot of Chinese tech companies is totally dependent on Western chips and Western chip technology.
Yep.
Okay, that's one thing. So the high tech they produce cannot be produced without Western technology. That's one thing. The second thing is what I think is very important. If you, I listened to this event with the Chinese Chamber of Commerce to EU had Wednesday, and the report they made, and I also read the report with the Chinese Ministry of Business, I think it's called, was publishing also regarding EU's proposal. But they talk about, we don't have good conditions in Europe, but European countries, companies, conditions in China is non-existent.
I completely concede that point.
So it's just like, hey, so that's one thing, but that's
As
not
Ian wrote, talking
one
about
thing-
hypocrisy at the start
exactly.
of his story. I mean, they do take the piss. I don't deny that
but
at
that's
all.
one
There's
thing.
stuff about WTO rules. And
Yeah,
they were going,
right.
But what makes me concerned is when I can see that China, Russia, and North Korea and Iran have a naval exercise 2 months ago in South Africa. Okay, when I can see that China have delivered the mobile networks that have been built in the occupied parts of Ukraine after 2014, for instance, on Crimea. When I can see that China is delivering technology to Russia, when I can see that China deliver to Iran, which have in the first hand produced the drones which the Russians was using to attack Ukraine, and delivering drone technology and so on. So I might just want to say that China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran, they are basically consider itself as best friends. And I'm sorry to say it, those four countries, I don't share values with those.
yeah, well, I kind of agree with you on that.
I agree, but my only point, to be slightly devil's advocate, a couple of points. Now, I think this year, or under this Trump Mark II presidency, America's been especially muscular and assertive. And so I think to some extent, I don't want to get told off by Ian by going too far into full geopolitics here, but to some extent, they not force, but they incentivize this sort of global south or BRICS or basically alternative spheres of influence to the US one, because I think they're in danger of overplaying their hand and alienating lots of people. I was just messaging a mate about, again, sorry Ian, this is regular news, but apparently a bunch of Middle Eastern countries now aren't letting America use their airspace and that sort of thing. And that was just one illustration of how I think America might be slightly overplaying its hand. And then circling this back to what you were just talking about, John, just because then a bunch of countries decide they're better off hanging out with China than they are America, for me, doesn't automatically make them the baddies.
No, but listen, let's be honest. Russia is not a democracy, okay? Okay? It's a dictatorship which have attacked 2 times Ukraine. 2014, first time, and now second time.
Yeah.
Iran is a country which have had numbers of proxy wars they've been involved in across the world have escalated over the last 15 years. We don't talk about only don't forget the proxy wars like in Syria and Lebanon and Yemen and all those things. We could talk about the proxy wars they're involved in Central America, like in Venezuela, like in Panama, in Argentina. We can talk about the proxy wars involved in Africa, like Mali, Nigeria, and other places. So Iran is basically a country which basically are fueling a lot of proxy wars across the world. Okay?
I agree. Their government has been very malevolent for 50 years.
Then we have North Korea, which basically just producing, things. So and also delivering soldiers to Russia, which are fighting on Ukrainian soil today. So I saw the other day there was a place to memory to pay respect built in North Korea for the North Korean soldiers which was killed in Ukraine.
Right.
We talk about thousands of soldiers.
I didn't realise there were so many North Korean soldiers involved.
It is. If I've said to you like 3 or 4 years ago that soldiers from North Korea will fight on European soil, you will think you're crazy.
Yeah.
So I think I must say, yes, we can do a lot of business with China. Listen, there's a lot of cool stuff on Temu. Yes, they're probably the largest manufacturers of sex toys in this world. So what can I say?
That's a tangent we definitely don't want to go down.
No, but I'm just want to say, no.
I think no. Don't answer that question.
No.
Carry on.
So no, I think we must be a little bit realistic, and the fact is that China, since he took over as president of China, have changed a lot. It's a different country.
Yeah, and that's a dictatorship as well, which will probably get me in trouble for saying it, but I don't think they have elections there or anything like that, do they?
Yes.
Not that I know about.
No.
Yesterday I was sitting and talking with a British couple at my hotel in a bar and getting a beer. And she said, they've just been in China and have these fantastic trains, and look at how good the trains is running compared to what we have in England. And then I said to her, sorry, but one thing, in China they can't, the reason why the train don't run here is because they're on strike. You can't do that in China. No. So I think there's a reason why. And her husband was just cracking up.
So I mean, I get your point about not saying that all cultures are equal and there are some moral calculations to throw in, and I'm not pushing back on that. So I guess I'm going to go back to the more realpolitik, pragmatic side, which is even if we don't approve of how they're run or how they treat the Uyghurs or whatever, I think we've got to do business with them. So then it's just a matter of, and then back to Ian's story of them going, so in his first paragraph.
I'm glad you brought up the business thing.
We can do a lot of business with them, but what I'm trying to say is, don't build the fundament for the digital society.
That's fine.
Buy Chinese equipment, and don't put your data in a Chinese cloud.
But the interesting thing about the paper that the Commerce Ministry came out with, which was citing the WTO a lot and how this is, it's very much reaching for kind of trade reasons while this is unfair, is if you take the security stuff aside for 1 minute and look at how Ericsson and Nokia, what access they have to the Chinese market compared with
which is
the access that Huawei has to the
I completely concede that.
That to me is the biggest hypocrisy. Like those companies themselves are now going around saying that Ericsson a little bit less publicly, but Nokia's been very strident on it. You were at the same press conference I was at with the CEO, for God's sake.
It's like, how come they can ban us and we can't ban them?
Our shares going down all the time. Combined with Ericsson, we're now at about 3% in China. Ericsson itself was claiming 10% back when I started working for Light Reading 12 years ago. And You look at their revenues, they break it out in their report, you can see what's going on in China just like that. Boye Ekholm, the CEO of Ericsson, his estimate of what Huawei has in Europe at the moment is between 33% and 40% market share still.
Yeah.
I mean, even after all the European restrictions and like the efforts to try and get...
Well, that's funny, because to be devil's
massive.
advocate, I could say that China only started really restricting Ericsson and Nokia after Europe started restricting them right about 2020.
No, a long time before.
I don't think so.
It was a long time before. But I'm pretty sure they had a much bigger market share 5 years ago.
Well, why would for a start, you could say that some of it's retaliation after what Sweden did, and obviously, obviously you can't expect Huawei and ZTE to be banned in Europe without there being some consequences in China. I don't want to expect the Chinese not to retaliate. But why is Nokia down to 1.5% or whatever it's on anyway? You can still use Huawei in Finland.
Look at the fact. Point. The reality is that Europe didn't come with the 5G toolbox before 2018, 2019. Okay.
Yeah.
So China start to roll out 5G way before that, and all the 5G contracts was given to 5G vendors.
But I think you've made the point before as well that China's whole goal is to be self-sufficient in critical technologies. They'll only buy stuff from Europe or from America that they can't get themselves, which is why they buy so many chips.
Yeah.
To your point, that chip making tools, and I did a story like a few weeks ago, like looking at Qualcomm, Intel, Nvidia. Plus those companies like that people ignore a little bit nowadays, like Applied Materials and what's the other one, Lam Research, and the guys who do EDA software, Cadence and those guys. Their sales have gone up in the last couple of years, even though people were saying that's the stuff you need to keep out of the Chinese hand because they'll use it to do their own kind of cutting-edge semiconductor equipment. They'll carry on buying that until they get to the point where they can do it themselves.
That's why ASML is such a critical piece
and
of
what
the
they'll
puzzle.
do is they'll take it, I hate to say it, and I'm not going to name any companies here, but they'll take it, they'll reverse engineer it, they'll figure out how to do it better.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the model, yeah? That's kind of why there's been so much intellectual property concerns about them.
But I think we live in Europe, we're Europeans, we have European values, and I think it's important to say that some of these countries, the way they look at human rights, the way, it's basically we're not in line with them, okay? And I must say, when I see what the Chinese is doing and have done across the world, it's honestly, it's you're British, but you colonize the world, or big parts of the world.
Well, yeah, we're not. Our
they're
hands
doing it
aren't
in a different
completely
way.
clean when it comes to human rights. If we look at our colonial past.
I'm not saying that was great that we did that though. In retrospect,
no, but a lot of the
we've moved on.
I must say, if I've been to I think it's close to 140 countries, and I must say the former British colonials is those who's doing best now, because Britain left behind trees. Yeah, lots of them.
I'm not going to be the person who sits on this pod going, "Yeah, the empire was great."
No, but you left. But you left behind. You left behind. You left behind a language.
Andrew Roberts.
You left behind the language, English. Which basically...
Which is obviously the best language.
No, it's become like the universal language, okay?
For that reason.
That's one thing. You left a legal system and you also left an education system.
And a bureaucracy. Okay? They still use English bureaucracy when you try and get a train in India.
Yeah, but look at
I'm not saying it's great, by the way, because it's about 100 years old.
Look at Rwanda, which basically was a Belgian colonial, and the official language was French. They, a few years ago, decided to change the official language to English because all the neighbor countries, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, all was English. So they say, listen, we need to turn it into that. And everyone I know is in Rwanda, and people I met there, they all actually love it. That's...
Well, so John, I prefer, when we're talking about this stuff, to steer it away from the cultural and moral stuff, because I just... Not that I wholly disagree with you, and I do think cultures are different, and I'd rather live in England than in China.
Yeah.
Certainly the kind of gobshite I am, I don't think I'd get away with half of the shit I do if I lived in China. Ian's gravely shaking his head. But I suppose I just prefer to focus on the pragmatic and the realpolitik thing rather than get into debates about who's got the better culture or who's more or less moral, because no countries have got clean hands.
Yeah, but we got the best language, definitely, haven't we?
Right, we got the best language,
and we got the best beer.
And we invented
It's much
football.
better than that Danish stuff.
It's certainly much better than that Tsingtao we had when we were in China. It was about 2.5%. What the fuck's that all about?
No, it's not. Tsingtao is not 2.5%.
It was in China when we bought it. Do you remember when we went on that little boat trip? We were getting more soda with each can we
were
drank.
with some locals. We were with some locals who had a sip of it and almost
they
passed
thought
out.
they have two
Maybe that's
versions.
why.
It's because you're English to say they drink like shit. So
No, I actually don't know if this is a fact, but maybe there's some state mandated thing on watering down the beer in China.
But listen, let's bring it back to the telecom part, because we can easily go down to this geopolitical part. So the reality is, if I'm sitting as a CEO, I'm serving on a board of a telecom operator. Okay, I want to know, can I keep on buying equipment from the Chinese to my networks? And I would say it depends on which country you are in. Fine. Is there any? The next question is, are there any other risk? There could be a supply chain risk if the Americans block for the Chinese not getting access to these things. I have a case right now which is very interesting. It's an operator who built data centers and in a number of countries, and they use NVIDIA chips, and because it's outside the US, it have to be approved by the BIS, who handle the entity lists and say about you can do these things. One of the operators I'm looking at right now is actually using a lot of Chinese equipment, and according to people local in the market, they have kicked out trusted vendors of their networks. And what would you do as an operator if you be considered by the Americans as China friendly? Could you come to the position where the American says, when you're going to upgrade your AI data center, you won't get access to NVIDIA chips?
Yep.
And we also see that some of these data centers built on NVIDIA chips in some of these markets basically are selling AI capacity to Chinese AI companies, which you do, if you do that and you're making money on Chinese AI applications, could that give a problems with the Americans? And the answer is very simple: yes. So I think it's important to say that if you're sitting in an operator, you could say, okay, what can I save? I had an operator which was actually lots of Chinese equipment, and decided to go for clean networks. And the CEO called me here some months ago. And he said, when you starting to see the framework of the proposal from EU coming out January 20, and he said, I'm so glad I listened to you. He said, honestly, I'm glad because I can see where things is moving.
Yeah, so pragmatism alone, getting ahead of regulation, that obviously makes sense.
Listen, that's my business. And my job is not to defend what the Americans doing, but I try to explain what's going on.
Just see things as they are.
Is there situations where companies in some of these Asian markets have built data centers and they're doing GPU as a service, and they're using Chinese companies as clients on that, and them coming under pressure to just use Chinese vendors for network rollout? Has that sort of thing happened?
Fully correct.
Right.
That's happening today.
Right.
That's happening today.
In bits of Southeast Asia, I'm guessing. And
exactly.
Yeah, right.
So not going into details which carrier, which operator it is, and which country it is, but right now I have one case where we have basically everything, all the documentation, and we have 3 other cases we're looking at right now.
Right.
So, and for me, it's like, what can I say to an operator like that? I can say it's stupid. Okay. I just say there's a business risk by doing these things.
Yeah, but it also suggests there's still not really an alternative to NVIDIA on the kind of GPU side of things anyway. I mean, I know there's a lot of talk about Huawei doing AI chips, but
I agree.
And the Chinese companies,
like
don't.
AMD.
Yeah, but AMD has no real market share, and if you talk,
it is an alternative.
Even in the sector we're in, I mean, this is one thing I've got out of conversations with Nokia actually about their AI RAN strategy, why they're so keen on NVIDIA and don't talk about AMD very much, is AMD just doesn't have the ecosystem.
Yeah,
it doesn't have CUDA, the aerial on top of that. I mean, we're getting into the specifics now, but that whole support that they provide for doing application
NVIDIA's done an
development.
awesome job of creating those software moats and
that's the problem
moats.
that Chinese companies are going to have. Like, what everybody's making a fuss about Huawei being the kind of GPU alternative to NVIDIA. They don't have. No one outside China is going to buy into their what is it called? CAN, isn't it? CANN. Can't remember what it stands. That's their CUDA equivalent.
Is that for Chinese GPUs?
That's their instruction set.
Right.
That's their CUDA. That's their software platform on top of their GPUs is called CAN. Right. CANN. CUDA's like Compute Unified Development Architecture, I think. Something like that. I can't remember what CAN stands for. I did know, but I don't think they're going to get people outside China to buy into that.
Chinese alternative to NVIDIA.
It's like trying to get people to do stuff. This is one of the problems ARM's had in the kind of data center world, the CPU world, is trying to get people to back trying to get an ecosystem of software developers together as an alternative to the x86 community. And that's exactly the problem that I think Huawei's going to have. You can say the Chinese market's a very big market, but developers, even in China, I think, want to be using NVIDIA. They want to work with NVIDIA.
My guess would be they'll do what they've done with smartphones, which is that Huawei doesn't use Android, or if it does, it uses some forked version.
Harmony, whatever.
Yeah. But it doesn't use Android as we know it. And that seems to be working. It keeps gaining market share in China. So I think we all know this. Like when we've spoken about Huawei's annual numbers that we did recently on the pod, they're obviously going to keep consolidating their position there. But what interests me, it brings me to a thing I wanted to ask John more broadly. All this points towards an increasing sort of bifurcation globally. Between the US sphere of influence and Chinese. And for the time being, I'm not talking about military, although I know there's a lot of overlap, but I'm just talking about trade. The more, to the first paragraph in Ian's story this week, where he goes, should the EU continue up the, quote, wrong path, close quote, targeting Huawei, ZTE and other Chinese businesses, China warns it will, quote, act decisively, close quote, to protect its interests. That sort of stuff is just going to keep happening, isn't it?
It is. And I think it's... what can we say? There was this event Wednesday with the Chinese Chamber of Commerce to EU. And I sent on the chat, you could not chat with other people in the event, that was blocked, but you could send to the hosts some questions. I did that.
But you did.
And before the event, I sent them 13 questions. I said, it's a lucky number.
Not so much for them.
So I sent them 13 questions. And of course, they didn't answer one single question.
Yeah.
And basically,
have you ever thought of making your questions a bit less arsey?
No, but I said, why don't you tell what the conditions is? I think I shared the questions with you.
You did.
It was quite fair questions.
They weren't. They
was actually totally fair. It's like, why don't you tell about the conditions in China? Yeah. What is the rules for building a mobile networks and owning a mobile networks in China, etc., etc. Yeah. It was all totally fair question.
Yeah.
And I want to say one thing. If the British government got those questions, or the EU Commission get those questions, they will answer.
Yeah.
To any journalist who asks them.
Yeah.
Okay?
We're much more open.
The Chinese, they don't do it. Okay? And that's a reality. And for me, it's about creating transparency. Yes, I have a view on human rights. Yes. I have a view on who China's friends is. Yes. But I think all these things full in line with the view I had when I grew up during the Cold War and I saw all these communist countries before the wall went down. My view have not changed.
I think
you don't like communist countries. You don't mind socialist countries, though, do you?
Socialist, no, there were some. It's a very good question. Some of them were socialist and some was communist. Poland was a socialist country. Yugoslavia was a socialist country.
That was just a cheap shot at Denmark by me. That was all.
No.
But no, I mean,
we don't have a government right
and I'll
now.
correct
They're not
myself.
the same thing as well.
Yeah, you're a social democracy. You're not a socialist. Full stop. There's a big difference as far as I'm concerned.
They pay high taxes, but they have good public services.
And the social democrats in our country, a lot of their policy in full in line with the ultra-right-wing people in Europe.
You don't see any homeless
like with
people.
immigration and stuff.
Yeah,
you're quite strict on immigration, aren't you, in Denmark?
Oh my God! It took my wife 12 years to get her citizenship.
So if I wanted to become a Dane, it would be a real pain in the
With a
ass.
Danish husband,
I'd have to
3
marry you.
Danish American kids.
You've got no chance.
And I tell you,
The only thing you've got in your favour is you look vaguely Danish.
no, it's
They think I'm Danish at the airport.
Yeah, they do.
I can't get my head around the...
Maybe you could do a DNA test and claim
I didn't even know how to pronounce the name of the hotel I stay at.
Well, no one can do that.
I thought it was Codbien, and what is it actually? Kulbun.
It looks like it should be codpiece or something, doesn't it?
I've got one other. I'm going to do one other contrarian thing to throw into the mix. So, being overexposed to China, I concede your point, John. Being overexposed to China, even if we take the security side of it, and we didn't spend that much time talking about your initial conversational gambit, which is talking about emergency services networks and that sort of thing. But obviously, this also applies to defence, which is increasingly using commercial networks as well. And being overexposed to China, I agree, is bad. They can be very capricious. Do you remember during the lockdown when I think Australia went, why aren't we finding out where the fucking virus came from? Or maybe they're Welsh.
Was that while they were banning Djokovic from playing tennis?
No, but then when Australia was asking these questions about the coronavirus, which, as far as I'm concerned, clearly was a lab leak from that lab in Wuhan in China.
Well, possibly.
No, I'm convinced.
Yeah, I know, but you don't know for sure.
I saw it leaking. I was like, "Wait, watch out!" Oh shit, too late.
Right.
Big coincidence.
No, it is quite a big coincidence. I agree.
Yeah, as per that great Jon Stewart bit about how there's been a sudden outbreak of chocolatey goodness in Hershey, Pennsylvania. But then Australia started asking questions about it, and then the next day, China put an embargo on imports of Australian wine. So that kind of capricious, sort of vindictive shit, I agree, is another reason not to be overexposed.
Well, that's just going to upset the Chinese, isn't it?
Well, and it did, but so
they threatened the European Union this week too.
Exactly. So I concede all those points, but my contrarian point is that it's not that the Yanks never do that sort of thing either, especially Trump under this one. In fact, I've just got this FT story I just kept up because I thought it might come in handy, where the US court, and here's a difference, by the way, between the US and China, is that Trump is held to account by courts. But a US court has just ruled that his 10%... Yeah, I'll have another. Thanks, mate. I'll have a Hazy J. Cheers. That his 10% global tariff is ruled illegal. And that was more a memory jogger for me. He's done some stuff. I think there was a time recently where the UK wasn't mucking in on the Iran thing and sending whatever shitty navy we've got over there. So we went, all right then.
It's not that bad.
Well, it's not all that, is it?
Aircraft carriers.
Yeah, with no planes on them. They're just carriers. They're just good for doing your ironing on, and that's about it. And then he went, oh, I see, it's like that, is it? Well, maybe you can't have the Falklands then, or some other stupid shit. So what I'm saying is it's not great to be overexposed to the US either, because they can be capricious and vindictive too. Unfortunately, we're not good enough to be self-reliant.
No, the way he talks is terrible, okay, unpresidential. And I must say there's been tons of rulings which have overruled some
which is good.
Done. It actually shows that checks and balances
the separation of powers
works in the US. That's one thing, okay? And I'm not on the list of those who say, "Oh, US is so bad," and so on.
No, nor am I.
They're just as dependent as we are as them. 95% of all Fortune 500 companies use SAP as handling finance, logistic, everything, production.
And they will drink scotch.
And the mobile network, the mobile networks in the US is delivered by Nokia and Ericsson. The chip machines is delivered by ASML.
Yeah, we're interdependent.
So we are very and honestly, the European politicians have been blessed for years because we have not spent any money on our defense, and the Americans have paid for our defense. That's a reality.
No, I think that's an oversimplification of it. They haven't paid for our defence. But yes, we have been reliant on them for our defence. But they get a hell of a lot back for having that, for example.
But we also get it. But
they
Denmark, my country, which have a giant surplus in the trade balance, okay?
Yeah.
A very healthy economy. Our biggest trade partner is United States.
Yeah, by the way, I agree. I think I think we've been wrong to allow our military to atrophy as much as we have. I completely concede.
I think everyone I know is working in defense. It's a huge problem. And if you look here, like Ukraine, if you look at it, the first 3.5 years, Denmark have spent equal to almost 1,600 euros per capita in the country to military to Ukraine.
Yeah.
Norway's number 2, 750 euros. France, 89 euros. Spain, 16 euros. Denmark has spent more money in total amount on military to Ukraine than France, Spain, Italy, and 7 other European countries combined. No, in total.
Oh, absolutely.
In total, absolute numbers.
Why do you think that is?
We can afford it, and I think we saw that it was good to help the Ukrainians and give them the military aid. If you look at a country like Spain, 16 euros per capita over a period of 3.5 years.
Yeah.
France, 8-9. France spent more money on Russian energy in 2024, where their Russian energy spending went up with 40%, then they have spent on military to Ukraine.
But to Scott's point, and I think that's great, and I totally go along with the line that like NATO spending by European countries has been neglected, and there needs to be more. I get that. You can't just expect somebody else to do it for you and not spend an equivalent amount of GDP. I take that point. But a lot of the rhetoric that comes out of the US at the moment suggests that, I mean, you were saying before you were very much a person who believes in principles, and like,
I agree.
Like the whole Chinese system is something that you're kind of opposed to, just because of what it is.
Yeah.
This current US administration seems to be a lot more transactional. It's like they're not really interested in getting involved. And I would like to think that one of the reasons that America has a commitment to Europe's defence is because it cares about sticking up for democracies in the same way that Denmark's sticking up for Ukraine, because that's the system of government that it's had since 1776.
I agree.
Whereas I think this guy just wants what he can get. Like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. If I can't get what I want, then I'm not really interested. You can look after yourselves. I might pull out of NATO even.
I think the way he's talking is terrible. Okay, and some of the things he's doing is a disgrace. Full stop. I don't need to defend him. Okay, but I would like to explain. Okay, so America is doing a lot in Latin America. They're right now cleaning up in Venezuela. I don't want to go into details on that one. We can discuss what's going on in Iran. Reality is Iran have increased the numbers of proxy wars. The reality is Iran wants to produce a nuclear bomb. They could have produced a dirty bomb, and go on Netflix and watch the TV series about the Ukrainian Russian nuclear power. What is called Chernobyl. And look what's happened there.
Is that the one that I've seen? There's a good series called
probably is
HBO.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah.
So I think it's important to say, and they spend a lot of money on defense in Asia and other parts. We don't look at it, okay?
Yeah.
And I could go back and talk about Denmark and Greenland. The way he talked about it and the way he had been exposing the Greenlandic people is terrible. But his criticism of my government, or not my government, my country's government, or previous government.
You can say your government.
You mean it's not actually your fully correct, because our Prime Minister was sitting 2019 and said, we have 5 dog sledge teams in the north, and we have 2 cannon boats with defect cannons, and we have a landing strip with so short they can't take an F-35 in the south, but we want to invest billions of Danish kroners in Arctic defense. Yeah. And that was in 2019. She was sitting promising that in the White House. He left the White House in 20. We didn't do anything. In the summer of 2024, it came out that we have spent 2 million euros on educating 20 Greenlandic people in digital security.
Right.
So basically, he comes in and see that what's happened in the meanwhile in the Arctic regions, what Russia built and stuff like that. And he had a phone call with her January 25. 25, just 5 days after he was put in office, and he probably peed all over her. And since that, all the communication between the Danish government and the American government have been through civil servants. And then our foreign minister reached out to Marco Rubio in December month 2025. Okay?
Yeah. But that doesn't sound good to have that kind of massive breakup that's happened. I mean, Spain's government's at odds within the Danish government. Everybody in Denmark seems to hate the Americans at the moment, apart from you.
No, but
it's just not a healthy situation in an alliance.
It's the way the Danish government, on my website, you search in Greenland, the whole research notes, 13 pages on it.
No, I think it's brilliant.
Three Danish ministers have read it.
About it.
Yeah. I think it's
none
great
of them
analysis.
was capable to tell me about there was any factual mistakes in it.
I don't think there are factual mistakes. I thought it was a great research note, but I'm just saying I think it's less based on principles and rights and more about what suits the Americans.
I agree.
I mean, everybody's thinking about interest in Greenland just being minerals and where we could,
forget the minerals and all that in Greenland. That's nothing. Okay. It is. I'm sorry to say.
Good luck mining, though.
It's fishing and a big.
But global warming will become easier.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. One thing I'm going to be contrarian to my own contrarian point, which is I don't like the way Trump's gone about things, but I think your point about Europe dragging its feet and Europe taking the piss and Europe making promises that it didn't deliver on kind of forces the Americans to be more muscular and more assertive, because someone like Trump, for all his many flaws, figures this is the only language these fuckers understand, because they're not going to do anything unless I threaten them. So that is a counterpoint.
Let's just take it very simple. Europe promised Obama that we will spend 2% on our GDP on defense.
Yeah.
Europe decided not to do it. Okay? Then Trump's come in office first time, then Europe do it. Then he comes in here second time. He says you need to go more. All countries in Europe except Spain adopt the 3.5 plus the 1.5%.
I mean, I think that one of the reasons they're spending at the moment, I think the relationship's not in a good place. And I think maybe the reason they're spending is because they're kind of concerned about America just saying we don't really give a shit in the future. Maybe that's the kind of ploy that they...
Europe, you could say... I met a senator in December when I had a presentation in the U.S. Senate on a security conference. I met a senator, and he said to me, John, can you, as a Dane, explain me why we're going to pay and support the war in Ukraine if Europeans don't want to support it financially? Yeah. That was his question to me. And this guy's from the Midwest, okay? So he basically, I could say to him, no, I can't. No, it's like, and I think, I'm proud of being European in many ways. I can criticize the European Union in many ways.
But the reason you support
But there's a lot of things in the European Union I actually like.
Yeah.
I'm sad that Britain left the European Union because you were one of the good voices inside it and dragging EU in the right direction.
I'm just going to pull it back to telecoms a little bit because it's related to the NATO thing. But this commitment they've given to spend, I don't know what the figure is, 5%. It sounds ridiculously high. They're not going to do that. But do you see any signs?
Historically, it's not that high.
It's not that high, no. But if you look at the number, because I looked at the figures, and if you look at what the actual sum is in terms of dollars, it's huge, the increase.
It is.
Now, and then Ericsson and Nokia, so there's the telecom angle. We were talking about spending on... replacement for Tetra. There's the MVNO story, but there's also a lot of hope, I think, within the telecom equipment companies that you can do battlefield comms. Definitely. You can do these ISAC type services. And they seem to be hoping for a bit of a boost in their own spend. I remember being on Ericsson Nokia's calls, and it was very subdued on the kind of military side of things. After kind of talking quite aggressively about it in 2025, it's like, it's a few years off maybe. I'm just wondering if there's any of this actually filtering through at all.
I think, I would think it will do.
Yeah.
And I think it will go faster than a lot of people realize. I think one of the... I think that you can use the mobile networks to take drones, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. There's happening a lot of things, and I think this whole telecom industry working with the defense is very interesting. You can make some interesting applications and services and stuff like that. And you could also, if you had imagine you build a military MVNO using all the mobile networks in a country, using the spectrum and the RAN. on that, and then on top of that, you integrate it to satellites, you integrate it to other kind of connectivities. You can make something really cool stuff. And if you look at the comm solutions which the military have, one of my friends, he's an officer in the Danish army, and he was an exercise I think it was in Latvia in autumn last year. And it was like 10 days exercise, and he said they didn't succeed there was soldiers from numbers of countries, they didn't succeed to set up a comm solution so they could communicate with each other. Right. So what they did, it was on their private mobile phones where they made WhatsApp groups and Signal groups and communicating with each other that way around. So it just shows that actually the military actually have some issues. You have inside the military some very advanced communication solutions. For instance, like the F-35 planes have some really cool advanced things to do, that when two F-16, F-35 planes meet, they start to communicate with each other and chat and talk, and Okay. So there is some very interesting things going on there, and I think the whole defense part is very interesting, and I think that a lot of European operators don't realize that if they want to be a part of that game in the future, then I don't believe you have a chance if you use Chinese telecommunication equipment.
I think that's hard to argue.
Yeah.
And it's fine. I'm reconciled to it. I'll make the principal point about who are we to say they're baddies and we're goodies and that sort of thing. But that's more of an intellectual exercise for me. I'm perfectly happy to concede the pragmatic point that this thing is happening now. There's no turning it back. You've got to pick a technological team in the world. I think it'll be interesting to see how many countries pick Team China technologically. Obviously, all of China will. The
battlegrounds are really going to be Africa and parts of Asia, aren't they?
But it's still a small Asia. Yeah. But I would say if you look at India, for instance.
Latin America.
India today have actually better 5G coverage than we have across Europe today.
Yeah.
And India is not using Chinese equipment.
No, it's all Ericsson and Nokia.
Yeah,
but they've got a duopoly that helps.
And I think a lot of countries have realized that doing business with China is very much a one-way business.
We're also subsidizing their
it's like,
yes.
It's a one-way business.
No, China can take the piss. I think they need to have a little think. If they really want to become, as lots of commentators have said, the sort of new global hegemon, take the place of the US, they've really got to change their MO, because to your point, it's not mutual enough relations with them. They've still got this sort of mercantilist, we've got to get the upper hand on everything sort of approach. And if they want to be a true global player, I don't see how that's sustainable.
No, but they import the raw copper from Chile, and then they create value of it.
That's his old stomping ground.
Yeah, that's where I was born. Do you know I was born in Chile?
I know that. Yeah. Well, I've been skiing there. It's a fantastic
country.
Have you?
I haven't.
It's really good.
You were too young for skiing at that stage.
No, skiing, and it didn't work for me. As soon as I started getting fast, I used to shit myself.
But it's a fantastic country. Yeah. It's a really nice country. I really like it. I've been there so many times.
Cool people as well.
Yeah. I think it's now we talk so much geopolitics, but the reality is if you're sitting in the top management of a telecom operator, if you're serving on the board of a telecom operator, it's something you need to understand. It's something you need to look into.
Yeah.
And you have to make some decisions.
Totally.
And basically, I'm sorry to say, the decision you're going to make is either yes or no. To believe that you can ride two horses, I think it's totally unrealistic.
While we're on this topic, though, I was going to ask you a bit about Ukraine, because it was one thing you sort of flagged up as a possible talking point. But you were saying in the areas that Russia now controls, equipment's been very quickly sort of swapped out.
Yeah.
What's it like in the rest of Ukraine? Because Huawei's had quite a big presence there.
There's a huge presence. It's quite interesting because there's several steps. We're just finishing in these days a research study, what's going on, also looking at the legal side of it, if you could say it like that.
Right.
So Ukraine is going through a process, despite the fact of the war. There's a process where EU and Ukraine is very much parallel. Ukraine wants to be a part of EU.
Yeah.
And I think it was April 1st that the Ukrainian government says they want to implement the 5G toolbox. The Ukrainian government have basically said we want to be in line with the EU because they know if you want to be a part of EU, you have to be compliant with the EU, and the roadmap for EU is very clear. So that's one thing. If you look at the infrastructure in Ukraine, where you have 3 operators, the Ukrainian operators is, I think, I don't recall exactly the number, I think like 60 or 70%, which is Chinese equipment today.
Right.
And the Ukrainian operators are advocating for the German solution that if you replace the RAN management software.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what they're advocating for right now. Okay.
Right.
And in my study, which I'm putting the last hand on right now, and basically came to this. It's amazing to see that you have Ukrainian operators defending China and Chinese companies, despite the fact that China is basically fueling the Russian economy by buying their oil and basically delivering technology to them. And at the same time, after the invasion of Crimea and the three regions of Ukraine in 2014, there was only 2G networks in those areas, and there have been built Chinese networks there using Huawei and I think also ZTE equipment.
Right.
And there was an issue actually, I think it was a Crimea where the operators didn't pay a bill to Huawei or something like that, and where they shut off the network, and then they reach out to the Russian government, which then fixed it, so it was opened again. And that's actually, that quotation, that information was in a Russian newspaper.
Right.
So it's, and I have it a little bit like, how can you in Ukraine sit and defend the Chinese? It
does seem a bit strange. I guess it's a similar argument to the one that the Germans have, which is we don't want to tear out all the equipment because it's disruptive, and
we don't want to pick.
Yeah, but Ukraine is still. You must remember, Ukraine is still a 4G market. They have not rolled out 5G net, so they have done. Kyivstar have done one trial in one area, and they're planning to do it in 2 other areas. So they're not done it yet. So they're in the process where they're gone. Next step for them will be 5G, and I don't think they will start that process before the war is over, if you could say it like that.
It would. It's curious because I would have thought that there'd be more interest among the telcos in saying, look, it is a potential security threat. We've spoken to the government. We can see China supporting Russia. Maybe now's the time to get this out and make the change.
This is just the attitude. This is a reality. And VN, which owns Kyivstar, basically have Mike Pompeo on the board.
Right, which again makes me think, why is this not happening? Why are they not moving ahead with it?
So maybe they're hedging their bets, and they're not completely confident once the war ends, assuming it does. God, how long has it been going now? Fucking 4 years, 5 years?
Almost 5 years. 4.5.
Maybe they're not completely confident once it ends that they're going to get a better deal out of the Western world, Europe and the US, than they would out of China. So maybe they're just hedging their bets post-conflict.
No, I don't think so, because let's be honest, Ukraine have a huge wish to be a part of the EU. Okay? It will probably take some years, and it will probably go to a process where they get some kind of association agreement, and this.
What does Russia think about it? Is it the sort of thing that Russia's likely to get belligerent about? Because I know it feels strongly about NATO.
They don't like NATO. They don't like EU. They don't like anything, if you could say it like that. That's for sure.
Okay.
I'm making a note about something. And I don't want to say what it is on the pod, but it's related to what we're talking about. So I'll tell you afterwards.
He's whopping his laptop out.
Oh my God. No, but I think it's important to say, Ukraine, we have the war. And when that stops, Ukraine needs to get rebuilt. Okay?
Totally.
And they also need to clean up in their own political system, which is in many ways a big mess.
Like having elections and that sort of thing.
Yeah, they're going to have that. They have a parliament, and I think I know maybe like 20 or 25 politicians there.
Do you?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you know Zelensky?
No, never met him. Never met him. But despite that, I think there's a whole cleaning up process. All those things, make it a proper country to work and so on. I think Ukraine will be an important country in the future. It has been for many years. The tech industry in Ukraine is huge. You must remember, going back to the old Soviet, that the tech region of Russia was Ukraine. So the Antropov planes was made there. The SS-20 rockets was made there. The first computers was made there.
A lot of the agriculture's from there as well.
And they've got a lot of software engineers now.
All the software engineers. They have giant software companies.
In many ways, it's the most developed part of former USSR, isn't it?
It is in many ways, and it's nice people and so on. But yes, there is a huge corruption issue there.
Yeah,
and you need to clean up in that. But I think it's important to say that Ukraine will be definitely in the future very integrated. We can always discuss about they will be a member state of the European Union or not. That's a longer and more academic and complex discussion. But I think they actually have there's 10 EU have this list of countries which was called the enlargement countries, which basically those who have an idea of becoming a part of the EU. And there's some countries in the former Yugoslavia which probably will become very soon. You say yes, further down the road maybe Ukraine. Then you have a country which is also on the enlargement list, which is called Turkey. I don't believe Turkey will become a part of the EU. As long as I'm alive, I think.
As long as you're alive, because you'll fight it.
no, but it's just like it's just like culture-wise and so on.
There's
Turkey
there's definitely a few edges to be smoothed on that one.
So they don't seem particularly democratic themselves, do they?
No. But I think there's two Turkeys in one Turkey. There's the one we see in the media, and because of Erdogan and the way he is. And then there's the rest of Turkey. If you look at the modern Turkey, well-educated people and super smart.
It's like, I don't. I've been there, and I could see that even when I was there years ago. But it's a state that's very much under the control of one man, isn't it? It seems it has been for a while.
But he's democratic elected, and you must remember the reason why is you have a country which is like two countries in one. A lot of people live in the countryside.
Yeah.
That's the same you saw in Poland. That's the same you saw in Hungary, and so on. And I think we in Europe must realize that yes, Europe have evolved dramatically since the wall went down, but there's some people which have feel a better improvement in their life than other people. And particularly those living on the countrysides of some of these countries maybe feel left behind. That's the reason why we see what we have seen in the past in Poland, we've seen in Hungary and so on. Then you have the young generations coming in, and the young generations maybe cannot, even if they live in the rural part, cannot identify themselves with that part. And you see that right now in Brazil, where you can say Lula, basically the young people have no respect for him, that he have been elected and what he represents. So it's quite interesting when you work with geopolitics across the world, as I do.
No, I know he's democratically elected, but I thought he was sort of democratically elected a bit like sort of Viktor Orban, who he's democratically elected, but he's done a lot to sort of undermine institutions.
I agree, but he was sitting not alone. He was sitting on a government with the support of two smaller parties.
Right.
So he didn't have the majority by himself, and their former foreign minister, I always forget how to pronounce his last name, was called Petro, their foreign minister, this guy you've seen, and said a lot of crazy things in the media. I had lunch with him some years ago, 3 years ago I think it was, in Budapest, and I was asking him all the naughty questions, it's like really John Strang questions. And he was totally open, saying, "Listen, when we try to we want to protect our borders for migrants coming through our country. The EU went crazy. Now EU supported, and he had all the arguments in place. Yeah. Some of them I agree with, some I definitely disagree with.
Yeah.
But I think it's very important to understand that we live in a world which is getting polarized, but I think we need to go more centric, and we need to more to listen to people. There's a reason why Americans have elected Trump. There's a reason why AfD have the success they have in Germany. There's a reason why Le Pen or Bardella in France have the position they have in the country. And I say whatever we can agree or disagree with these people, and in many ways I definitely disagree with a lot of these people in quite many ways. We must accept that there are actually some people who actually support them, and there's a reason why they do.
Totally, but as long as the elections are free and fair, and they're not doing things to undermine institutions in between those election dates, that's the problem.
I just looked up a couple of things. So regarding Erdogan, I was quite pleasantly surprised, not that he lost the last election, but that he didn't play silly buggers after he lost.
Well, that was my feeling, I think, when I saw the last Hungarian outcome, because I thought there'd be a similar thing going on there.
Sorry, I meant to say the Hungarian guy.
Ah, okay, yeah.
So
Erdogan's actually still...
I've got something to say about Erdogan, but what was his name, the Hungarian guy?
Viktor Orban.
Orban, yeah, ends in An. You can see how confusing it is for me.
But he was basically Putin's best mate in Europe.
But I was pleasantly surprised that there wasn't too much fuckery. Firstly, that he was allowed to lose, and there wasn't too much fuckery, and then on to Erdogan, who is the Turkish
Vladimir's going, what the hell? That was my backdoors guy. That was. You know?
I just looked up their
Robert Fico from Slovakia is the other one.
Yeah. I looked up their most recent general election, which was...
You can tell that story.
Which was 2023. Let me quickly finish. Yeah. I've been trying to say this for a little while. Erdogan only won 52% of the vote.
Only?
Erdogan? No.
Yeah, this is Erdogan now. And...
Give the man a bit.
Presumably I wouldn't be surprised if there was some fuckery there, but when you've really got no democracy, or when you've really got a heavy corruption, people get like...
They usually get 90%.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's my only point there. I mean...
Vlad usually gets 90%.
I'm sure there is some corruption of the democratic process, but for him to only end up with 52% is something.
But can I come back to the telecom part? You must remember, in each of these countries, you have normally around 3 mobile operators. You have a numbers of fixed line operators. All these companies are doing long-term investments, okay? And you have a political system can be more or less stable. You can have all the challenges. You're doing an Ian Morris. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Moving the chair around.
Yeah, that's telling John off for pirouetting in his chair.
No, so I think it's very important to understand that as a telecom operator in the past, your life was totally different. I've been in this industry for 30 years. I could see which kind of products, which kind of knowledge did my customers was requiring for in the past. Okay, so when I started, it was like, how can we reduce distribution costs? How can we reduce subsidies for phones? How can we reduce dealer commission? How can we get a bigger market share in multi-brand dealers like Car From Warehouse, which had all the operators and so on. And now I see that my clients want to know what's going on geopolitically. So what's going on? We're sitting right now. We know that Trump is probably soon going to China. We are right now preparing, what do we think the impact will be in the telecom industry when he's back?
Yeah.
There's a lot of blur here.
He's going to come back and he's going to go, Huawei, we love them. They can come and...
No, but I think it's very important because you're representing... All these operators are representing billions in cash flow. They're representing billions of yearly investments. Depends on which country it is, okay? All these countries have to adjust to this new reality. And if you look at it, as a telecom operator, how can I improve my business? Making the right regulatory decision to be sure that the regulatory systems support me and support the industry can be a better business case than just running the business better, the day-to-day business. It's a little bit like you had a restaurant. You could improve your business case of your restaurant, not by serving better food, but just be sure that you have better hygiene in the kitchen. And when those who check the hygiene in the kitchen came and do the inspection, you did a good job.
Yeah, totally.
No, that's fair enough. And it's no-brainer. Look, we can argue the toss about the rights and wrongs of regulation, but it is what it is. And obviously you've got to acknowledge it. And
we have actually 2 interesting things which we had on the topic here. We have one thing, the things what's happened in the US, the court ruling the other day, regarding the non-discriminatory rules for broadband.
We might come on to that.
And then we also have the GSMA, which came out with this report about the investment gap in Europe.
Yeah, we wrote that up.
And I think both of you covered that one.
I haven't written my thing on the investment gap in Europe yet.
Okay.
But
it's just a number who's keep on growing.
I'm hassling the GSMA to get some answers to questions.
Oh, are you? You're doing a deeper dive. So we wrote it up. Mary, for us, our headline was...
Mary did a great story.
Europe needs consolidation to plug €200 billion 5G investment hole, according to the GSMA. So
are we going to talk about that then?
No, I'm just saying that this is only because
but I think it's just a number which keep on growing.
I just wondered if we're moving it on to another topic.
Well, we are soon.
The time for me to take a quick bathroom break.
Okay, shall we? Well, I think we're good. It's been over an hour, so I think we're good if that's all right, John.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right, we're going to have a little break because Ian's about to piss himself. Yeah. Okay, and we're back. We're going to move it on. So, as we teased earlier, Ian went to Wembley and hung out with BT. Yeah. BT, not EE, just BT.
Yeah. No, EE was there as well.
Yeah, okay. So I wasn't there, so I won't do any more talking. Just remind us again Remind us again what the purpose of the event was and what you took from it.
The reason they did it at Wembley was because they are like telcos like to make a big deal when they get these big sports events, as we know, because we've been to a few where they're doing the connectivity for the event.
Yeah, you've been to a few more than me, but that's another matter.
Yeah, and no, you've been to some good ones.
I know. This is just my running joke.
And well, not just telcos, but infrastructure companies as well, like the vendors. But they've secured the deal to do the connectivity for Euro 2028, which is when the European Football Championships are the next best thing after the World Cup. Actually, some people might say it's even better than the World Cup.
No,
controversial.
No, but you've got to have Latin American teams.
It's when it's teams. In, but you get a lot of crap teams in the World Cup, is what I mean, as well. Whereas the level tends to be quite consistently high when it's Euros.
That was true, but now they've opened Euros even more now, so you do have crap teams in Europe too. But that was true until the last one.
Brilliant. So they've allowed non-European teams to come in, and
Vatican City gets its own team or something.
San Marino.
The Pope is sitting there making the ball fly.
San Marino,
Andorra.
Or the Faroe Islands has its own team or something.
Yes, they have actually.
Have they really got their own team? How many people live in the Faroe Islands? About 3.
No.
So that's a Danish thing, isn't it?
67,000.
That's nothing. That's got to be a really bad team out of 67,000 people.
Actually, in handball, they're doing really good.
Anyway.
I mean, Iceland has like a population of
250, 300. Yeah, I know. Well, they did beat England as well.
I want a Greenland team. I want them to play America. Anyway.
No, Iran playing America would be a really interesting thing, which could happen.
Well, that did happen in a previous World Cup.
But they've won the connectivity deal, which is why they're doing it at Wembley. Had some footballers on. It's quite a big
and how big a deal is winning the connectivity deal?
Well, I don't think it's a big deal it's like the Ryder Cup for HPE. I don't think it makes a huge difference.
But it's good for marketing.
It's good for marketing. It's like a great marketing opportunity. It's like why do people want to be associated with the Olympics? It's like an opportunity to showcase your country.
But it's more than sponsorship. They're actually doing the infrastructure.
Yeah, they're doing the infrastructure, which is always going to be a given, I think, because who else could do it in the UK? I mean, you've got other mobile operators that are good, but it's all about broadband.
So some of this is a bit opportunistic then?
It's opportunistic, but I think they've used the opportunity well to sort of say now's the time to have a think about like our position in the UK economy and like try and make a bigger deal of the brand that is the company name, which has become, I think, a little bit... I mean, the story that got broken, as I say, by the Telegraph is very much... I thought they were a little bit harsh in their assessment, which is that BT tries to revive battered brand or something.
And I thought it was interesting... Was it you in your story going that the Telegraph wasn't at the event? Did you say that?
So I spoke to people there who shall not be named from BT, and I almost got the impression that they'd been uninvited after writing that story, because the story was...
So what's the name of the guy? We've met him a few times, the Telegraph...
James. I don't think it might... I mean, James did say battered brand, I think, in his headline, but I think the comment piece that followed that was even more like... This is.
I don't think I read that.
So the comment piece, which wasn't written by James, is like they have their own opinion writers, was almost the impression I got from... And as I say, I haven't read it. I read that strapline in the title.
Battered, yeah.
But the strapline in the title made out that unless BT does do this, it's going to sort of fall victim to a foreign takeover. And I was like, they're not going to fall victim to a foreign takeover because they mess up some brand campaign. And they're not doing... I think there was I don't know if this is suggested in the story, but there was a bit of an impression, I think, among some of the reporters at the event that they were almost going to completely deprioritise EE and no, now it's all about BT Mobile. No, they're not doing that. They were quite at pains to say that the EE brand that clearly is still the kind of main mobile brand. But I think what Alison Kirkby's trying to do, because she stood up and one of the first things she did was to go on about how much they've spent basically on connectivity infrastructure in the UK since 2020.
Yeah.
It's 25 billion. And they're on course to spend another 15 billion until 20. They're by far the biggest investor in UK digital infrastructure out of all the FTSE companies. And she's done, I'm prepared to give people credit when it's due. Since she came in early 2024, their share price has doubled.
Right.
They're a much more efficiently run business now. They're kind of improving on all metrics. They've got a glide path towards. This is the other interesting thing. So that rollout that they've been doing of fibre to all UK premises. And by the way, before all that started a few years ago, the UK was awful when it comes to broadband connectivity in Europe. You looked at all those. Denmark's always up there, and the UK was, Denmark and the Netherlands and all the others.
Stop sucking up to John.
No, I'm just saying, the Scandinavian countries always did well, and the UK was always at bottom sort of 3 or 4. They're still based on ADSL. They don't.
Yeah.
They've now done this very good rollout of full fibre to 25 million premises. Almost finished. Will be finished this year. Having spent about 5 billion a year on capex, they're tapering that down so that you have more free cash flow. So the one thing you're thinking is now is an opportunity to use the resources we've got for other things, which can be brand campaigns.
Yeah.
And I think there's just this concern that nobody really knows who BT is the impression I got. I know that the Telegraph was sort of making out
we've got an ancestral awareness of
I think
BT.
for many people in England, BT is a phone booth.
Right.
And then it is
and there's the input in Bob Hoskins,
which you don't have anymore.
Yeah, but I think so. One of the things that the Telegraph was suggesting in its story was that what they want to do is they're concerned about old people who are familiar with BT and don't really know who EE is and don't really know who some of the other brands are, and we need to sort of revive it for their benefit. I'm not convinced I go along with that argument, because if you think about the BT or British Telecom that was around in the 80s, it was bad customer service. Like my dad always having to go at my sister for spending an hour and a half on the phone to her boyfriend, and he's got this enormous bill.
State monopoly.
Crappy old monopoly everywhere. Everyone knows who British Telecom is, but doesn't have a very good perception of it. Whereas now,
which is now a hotel,
their customer service nowadays is actually. I am accustomed. They're actually really good. BT.
Yeah, I'm a broadband. I'm a fibre customer.
I think they're really good on customer service. They've got the best networks in the country. They're in a much better position, I think, nowadays than they were even a few years ago. Even if you go back to the sort of
they have the advance of the scale, but why don't they put the two brands together and call it BEET?
Well, they do.
Well,
they call it BTE. They just call it BTE. If you look at the shops now, they've got the logo afterwards.
But you're right.
Increasingly referred to as BTE.
Beat might have been fun. Yeah.
But the trouble with doing things like that, everybody likes to have these little let's do a silly amalgam. Like Ray used to do this when he worked at Reading. Let's call it Cisco Son if Cisco buys Ericsson, and it's just stupid because everybody's going to look at it and go, well, what does that mean? You basically just lose the two original brands.
I got some traction for Threedaphone.
I know, but it's funny to say what it could be.
But that was only a joke.
It's never going to get you anywhere. So they have to think about how they're going to do it in a sensible way if they want to try and push the BT brand out there. What they're not going to do is get rid of EE, and there'll probably still be that shop thing of BT EE. But I think they want to try and inject the BT mobile brand more into some. So if you're a broadband customer and maybe you're using another mobile phone provider, that's an opportunity for you to come along and say, why don't you think about using BT Mobile?
I think also it could also be that they do on the launch a mobile brand called BT. Could be on the corporate side for corporate customers.
Business things are massive.
Business sides because they say basically yes, you're a consumer. EE become like a consumer brand, and BT becomes like the business brand because they want to sell. They want to do cross selling. So the business customers at EE, they want them to buy broadband connectivity from BT.
Yeah. But I wonder if there's some kind of cachet in just they've become really invisible, I think, in the UK, not just because of EE. I mean, when they bought EE in 2016, and it was called EE at the time, they could have tried to impose BT on it then, and it would have been hard to do. But at least they'd have had 10 years by now.
But I don't think they dare to touch that brand. You don't want to rock the boat.
But the problem is most broadband connections are not BT's like name is not necessarily associated with them. Like Openreach is definitely the dominant broadband provider in the market in terms of the infrastructure, but Openreach isn't a consumer-facing brand.
But you have many places in the UK. You have not only one fibre network, you have two networks, and some places even three. There's a lot of overbuild in the UK.
You do, but none of them's provided by BT.
I agree.
From a customer perspective, they see these vans driving around with Openreach written on it, and it's like, Openreach? I don't think so. People like you talk to them about BT or British Telecom, they wouldn't necessarily make the connection between BT and Openreach.
Yeah.
And I wrote a story with BT Openreach in the headline, and Openreach press people get in touch with me and take me to take the BT part out of it.
Yeah, well, that's because they're supposed to be separate, and they get all twitchy about it.
Totally, but from a branding perspective, they're not allowed to put that in. They're not allowed to link the two brands. There's an obviously the BT brand is completely. People don't make the link between the fact that the company that's gone around the country spending all this money for you to spend your whole day working, because let's be honest, BT is far more important nowadays than it was in 1985 when I could get through days without making a phone call and still live my life. I couldn't not be on a connectivity these days and get through a whole day. I just couldn't. Nobody can.
But listen,
and yet nobody knows that
how
BT's
dependent
doing
we are on telecommunications. That's the reason why the security part is so important, and that's the reason why the political system have so much focus on it right now.
Yeah.
I've got a slight bit of pushback on what you just said, Ian. I think so. My broadband provider and the person I have my billing relationship with is BT. It's not Openreach.
Yeah, I know. I'm not saying it's completely vanished.
And I just did a quick bit of Googling because I keep my laptop whopped out while we do the podcast. And BT's the biggest. Do you want another?
Yes, not this one, the other one.
What?
Yeah.
I nicked the last one of the ones you brought.
You did? It is. Take
These
this
are
one.
nice.
That's
Same thing.
Same.
And BT's the biggest brand if you group in EE and PlusNet.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not the biggest brand, but it's far less visible than it was in the old days when it was the only telecom company that you could use, and it was as ubiquitous as British Rail was at the time.
Fair enough.
Or the Post Office or something. These days, telecom consumers, you could be a youngster these days in your mid-20s, and I believe you could probably not even have heard of BT, because nobody watched these adverts that used to have Bob Hoskins in, which I referenced in the opening paragraph,
which I always do,
which you couldn't get away from at the time. You could be completely oblivious to the fact there's a company called BT that actually does most of your kit. It's a bit.
And then Maureen Lipman, do you remember Maureen Lipman
did, I think, before him maybe, or was it?
Yeah,
after him?
with the kid who had shit exam results.
But they're a little bit like. I mean, it's a little bit different, but from a kind of branding obscurity perspective, you think about Nokia, which isn't a consumer-facing brand at all. I accept that these days, but also incredibly important. Like if you didn't have Nokia around, the megabytes would stop moving basically in this country, because they're the only option you've got, the only scale option you've got for broadband infrastructure. There isn't any others at all. There's Adtran and Calix, which have about
because we're not allowed Chinese people thanks to
the
John.
market. Ericsson doesn't do that stuff, and then the Chinese vendors aren't allowed, so they're the only scale option. And yet, when I was talking to somebody last year, and when I've been on a trip to Finland to see Nokia. This is an ordinary person who's not in telecom and not an idiot, but just a normie. Are they still around then? I thought they kind of disappeared when Apple came along with the iPhone. So they're kind of like irrelevant from a consumer perspective, and yet everybody depends like really, really heavily on them.
I've got two comments on this from a branding point of view.
Cisco can also be there. Shannon.
Yeah.
It's less important for them because they're not consumer facing, I guess. But
from a branding point of view, one I want to make, in fact, I'm going to do it in reverse order because the second one sort of begs a question that I want you to answer. The first one is, and I'm sure you were, Ian, and I'm sure other telecoms commentators are saying this, when the acquisition or merger or however it was framed of EE by BT happened 10 plus years ago, we were all thinking, how the fuck are they going to reconcile these two brands? And I think we all thought that EE was the sexier, newer, more mobile aligned, nicer colour scheme. It just looked cooler. And
it was anyone that did mobile.
Well, yes, obviously at the time, but generally, what was going to be their go-to-market brand? Were they going to try and have a dual brand? Were they going to focus on one, and all that sort of thing? And I have some sympathy. It was a dilemma, but I am critical of the fact that we're still having this fucking conversation a decade plus later, that they still haven't worked it out.
But I don't. What they're suggesting, I don't think, is to phase out EE. That's not.
No, I know they're not saying that. They're still going for a dual brand strategy, but that dual brand strategy at this stage of the pod, that's difficult to say. It just seems to have been oscillating and incoherent, and they've never quite made up their mind, and they still seem to be agonising over it.
I mean, I'm not sure that's... yeah, you could argue that's the thing. I think what Alison Cope is trying to do is make something of the BT brand that hasn't been there at all before.
So what is the new thing?
Well, I mean, as I've just explained, they're trying to put a BT mobile out. If you're a broadband customer and you're using BT services, but you might have another mobile provider, you would market a BT mobile service to those people who at the moment are probably thinking, what the hell's EE got to do with BT? It's probably completely not obvious to them that they can get the service from the same person that provides their broadband service. You re-inject the mobile brand that way, and then you start to build on that. So Kester Mann's line at CCS Insight, which I think is like quite a smart one, is that you start off that, and then maybe it becomes a more sort of affirmative and positive thing going forwards, and then maybe you start to see not necessarily a phasing out, but maybe the BT mobile starts to get positioned towards other segments as well.
But I think you must remember
because the synergies between the two are lost when you've got these separate brands to some extent. I think
the marketing synergies, but the infrastructure synergies is still there. Okay, there's huge infrastructure.
Totally,
synergies.
yeah,
agree. So the branding is, if we look across the world and see which operators are most successful, those with a single brand and those with a multiple brand strategy. The multi-brand strategies was started in Korea around 2001, 2002 by KTF, who had a brand for old people, one for kids, one from women was called Drama. So we
good name.
But so we have seen that. Then later on we saw operators which basically used MVNOs and in that way create a multi-brand strategy or did their own multi-brand strategy.
Yep.
And those operators gain market shares because you basically said instead of serving everyone with one brand, we serve different people with different brands. Those which are price sensitive, we serve them with a price sensitive, low price discount brand, etc. So I think this is just the first step. You must remember it's the third telecom operator Alison is CEO for.
Yeah.
TDC, Telia, and then BT. And I think that for me, it's like, I think if you were sitting inside BT, you would say the risk of killing the EE brand will be huge. Well, then if it was Vodafone, they would have killed it from day number one. So it will all be Vodafone to a certain extent. Yes, they have made a discount mobile brand called, I think, Giraffe or whatever it is. But the reality is, I think that you will see that they will use the BT brand probably on the corporate side.
Yep.
And I think the corporate mobile customers will not in the future. I think EE will be more like a consumer brand and BT will be a business brand. And
I don't see what's changed after this week then.
Well, the big change is BT Mobile becoming a thing. That's not a brand at the moment. That was killed.
And it's targeted at people who are already BT broadband.
It was BT originally.
I just think I think
back in the day.
This is the biggest brand campaign they've done in a decade. Was one thing they said. Yeah. So the advert that they showed, I think the thing is to get the BT name out there more than it's. Don't play the ad because it's like it'll be noisy and everything. No, but I think the BT ad, the BT name, I don't think has been put out there very much. I think people are quite oblivious to it. I think this is arguably as much about broadband as is about mobile. And you were saying you're a BT broadband customer, but there's a massive opportunity at the moment if you can get the BT name like out there, and like they've got the Euros coming up. We're the connectivity provider of it. Look how important we are. Think more about who your broadband provider is going to be. And by the way, loads of outlets are going to get out of business in the next few years. Think about who you might want to use as a kind of provider. I think it's. I can definitely understand why she wants to just make a bigger deal of the BT brand generally.
Let's be honest. She's the CEO of BT, and honestly, when she goes in a place and she says, I'm the CEO of BT, who the fuck is BT? That was something from the past, okay?
Yeah.
So they want to revitalize the BT brand.
Yeah.
And I think they will, my personal opinion is, I think we'll go in steps. I think the first step is you use BT brand and broadband. You do BT mobile on the corporate side.
Yeah.
And then you could also use the BT mobile brand on those who buy a package which including BT broadband and mobile. So you have a bundle with mobile.
Yeah.
So EE will go in a direction of more being mobile-only customers and consumer customers.
Yeah. I by the way, I'm not saying any of this is going to work. I'm just saying I can understand
characterising their strategy.
Yeah. But the other thing I would say is I thought their advert, which they showed at the thing, I thought was actually quite good. You know, that some of those you look back at those 1990s.
Look what they got at the end of the ad, John.
Oh, the phone booths. And you know one thing.
I
walked by a phone booth yesterday where all the windows was broken and it looks like terrible. But in front of British Museum, of the British Museum, there's two phone booths which they have turned into like a kind of little museum inside.
Yeah.
One of them, I think, there's a fox standing in it, reading or something like that. So
I mean, it is. I hate the word because it's really overused, but it is an iconic thing. The British phone booth.
Yeah,
it is.
But the advert's quite.
I don't know what you had all the commercials you have inside the phone booth in London.
But you watch
not
those,
so much now.
Yeah,
you watch those old Bob Hoskins and Maureen Lipman ones, and they're quite sort of they're a bit sort of tacky. It seems.
Yeah,
now, looking back at
young
it.
women.
Whereas this is quite.
No, I just watched it. It was good.
It's quite dramatic.
And what they're trying to do is convey the impression that look. I don't know if you realise how fucking important BT is.
Exactly. Yeah.
I get what they're trying to say. I've got no. You go ahead. John.
I think the other reason, the one other thing I'd say, and John go, but I think the other thing is sovereignty, right? So you look at branding generally. No telcos have very good brands internationally. I would say I'd put that out there compared with Nike, Apple, Leica, whatever it might be.
Yeah. As you said in your piece.
Yeah, the ones I think I named. But I think
why did you use Leica?
Because I know that's a brand that is a small brand that people are. I will never ever move away from Leica. Right. If you talk to anybody who's a photographer,
optics.
Yeah. But if you look at the brands that are actually in our lives every day at the moment on a much more kind of like you can't get away from it basis, they're the big tech companies like Facebook, Google, who. I think, when the Telegraph's saying BT is a battered brand, I think those companies are far more tarnished nowadays than BT. I mean, we'll never stop using them because we can't, but everybody's very mistrustful and suspicious about where it's all going. And I think even more so with AI, I don't think anybody really, I mean, certainly Facebook, that's a brand they pretty much tried to kill almost with the Meta kind of renaming. But I think even the other ones.
I think it's this brand-wise becomes... It has always been important in telecom. And if you look what operators have spent on the branding, it's
Telecom's advertising is ubiquitous. You see it everywhere.
I would say it stopped. I would say it mainly stopped around 2008 when the iPhone came, where the numbers of operators got the exclusive deal with the iPhone to distribute it. We did a report in
2002 was first, wasn't it?
Yeah, we did a report in 2009 about the iPhone, where we actually proved that all the operators across the world, which got an exclusive deal with Apple for the iPhone, none of them increased their market share and none of them increased their profitability. Okay? That's very important. So I think
all the profits went to Apple, didn't it?
It went to Apple. So you could say if you look at what operators have spent in subsidies and marketing money to build up Apple where they are today, it's huge amounts, okay? Now they don't, in our part of the world, they don't subsidize the phones anymore, or they have financing programs where the subsidies is minimum. I think it's important to say that operators need to reinvent themselves. They need to find out, are they just stupid pipes which are delivering connectivity the same way as this utility company?
Dumb is the more commonly used term.
Yeah, I know. I was polite.
Okay. You were trying not to antagonize
instead of those who, similar to those who deliver electricity. So that's one issue. The question is going to build something on top of it. If you look historically, in Denmark, there was a debate. We need consolidation. I agree about that, and so on. And the CEO of Telenor in Denmark, he was out saying, "Oh, we need to make more money so we can invest in innovation and so on." And I sent him an email. He never replied to me. He normally replies, but I sent him an email. Sorry, last time your company launched an innovative product which creates something different for the consumers was in 1999, where you launched premium SMS so you could vote on TV, buy ringtones and logos. Okay, that was an innovative product which created a whole new revenue stream.
The days when ringtones were a big revenue stream.
Very big. So what's interesting here is, and I said to him, could you please send me a list of new innovative products you have launched since that time?
And for some reason he didn't reply.
No, because he could send me an empty email, but that's okay. But that's the reality. Okay, so you could say we must realize that all the innovation which have come in this industry is delivered by OTT companies.
Yeah.
It's services on top of the connectivity.
Yeah.
It's the smartphone providers.
They wouldn't like you for saying
it's
OTT,
the operating system providers and so on. And I must say, it's even a lot of the operators in the past was selling hosting services, and they spun off their hosting business, which today is cloud business. Yeah. So then now some operators moving into the cloud business and offering that and talking about sovereignty clouds and all those things. But the reality is they imagine you're sitting here, it was like common for telecom operators across Europe going 15, 18 years back to spin off their data centers because there was no business in data centers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they sold it off.
But I'm not sure if they'd have been better off if they just stayed as voice companies, would they?
No, and I agree.
They've done very well out of a world where there is data connectivity, and I mean the point about there being too many networks in Europe, I can go along with that.
I totally.
But
agree.
if you're in a market where that's the issue's addressed. Some of them do. T-Mobile does extremely well in America out of being a data connectivity provider, and all those companies that have come along and sold stuff over it, they do extremely well out of that.
Listen, all the American operators, so if we talk about the three key operators like Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T, lots of them have a lot of services today on top of their networks, which they sell to corporate clients and private clients, mainly corporate, but they have a lot. They have even APIs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think in that way, but of course it's also a big market with 340 million people. So there's a bigger market. You have scale. You could say Vodafone should have scale with the numbers of countries they're in. Deutsche Telekom should have scale.
They've gone the other way, haven't they?
Yeah.
But they don't own diddly squat these days. They're in a farm in Wales and a couple of Samsung sites they're trying to
Not that we've got any problem with Welsh farmers. We're pretty much out of time, by the way. We're not going to be able to talk about that regulation thing. We're going to have to... Yeah, Pierre's doing theatrically cutting his throat at me.
It's over.
We'll have to save the regulation chat for the pub.
Yeah, that's okay,
John. But
I think we've been through a lot of regulations. Well, I've just honestly,
but there was that one story that I spoke about prior to this, but we haven't had time for it. Yeah. Anyway, I just got one last thought on this BT thing. I'm a BT fibre subscriber and I'm an EE mobile subscriber. One of the reasons I'm an EE mobile subscriber, I think I used BT Mobile back in the day in its previous iteration.
BT Cellnet, was it?
No, we're not that long. I'm not that fucking old, John. I'm talking about a few years ago, not decades ago. Well, I am that old.
That was the mobile thing.
One thing was BT Cellnet. I remember.
You're definitely that old.
You remember when in the olden days, so the mobile operators were subsidizing prepaid phones. and you could buy a box with a prepaid phone.
I was trying to wrap it up. Yeah.
No, it's okay. And I remember I was in Singapore, and there were stacks of these boxes, and it says BT Cellnet.
Yeah.
And so on. And I was speaking on a conference here in London, and I said, I've just been to Singapore. I've seen how successful BT Cellnet is in Singapore. And there was a guy raising up saying, sorry, we're not in Singapore. I'm sorry, but you can buy your phones all over in Singapore. And what's happened was people bought them with subsidies here, took them to Singapore, put in a new SIM card and sold them.
Yeah, well, you can't argue with that. Just my thought is, I think when I got onto EE is I went into a BTE co-branded shop, and the guy in the shop basically competed against... There was EE and BT competing against each other in this shop, and he went, I can get you a better deal on EE than you're getting on BT. And this is kind of my point about co-branding, is it's not just difficult in terms of, like, per Ian's story about how expensive and complicated it can be to manage the marketing and the messaging and all that. But commercially it's complicated, because if they're going to resurrect the BT Mobile brand, how are they communicating with me, Scott, who is a BT Mobile subscriber? Should I now leave EE and go back to BT? I just think all those things are a little bit messy and complicated. I'm not expecting either of you to answer it.
You've seen that in many countries, yeah. But it's like you can go back, if you go back in the time when you did this, Carphone Warehouse was so big in UK that they had a bigger market share of the sold contracts than any operators. And basically they could move market shares just like saying, oh, we put focus on your products. Charles Dunstone did a fantastic job there.
Did for a bit.
Now
where are they?
Now he owns Five Guys. You know, he's in the burger business now.
Does he own Five Guys?
Yeah, he owns
Five Guys. That.
Charles Dunstone.
You mean the UK franchise?
The UK franchise as Charles Dunstone.
Ask him why it's so bloody expensive.
But CPW or whatever.
Well, it should be. They cost about 12 quid. It's not fast food, is it?
So Carphone Warehouse still going, but I never encounter it. Anyway, we got to stop there. John, it's always a pleasure, mate.
The pleasure's on my side.
I would be grateful if you'd hang out with us after.
Always.
And we can talk some more shit.
If we do that.
And if not before, I'm definitely going to be over in Copenhagen in June, so I hope to see you there. Are you going to be around
I will
June,
be. Yes, we're going to talk what day, because I'm going to Paris.
Oh.
I think we have a meeting at OECD.
I think I'm arriving 22nd, leaving 24th is my plan.
I will be the 24th, I think it is, or 23rd or something. I will find out.
Right, we'll work it out. But, you know, if you've got better things to do, I understand.
No, I'm being invited to Paris, and
I could go to Paris rather than hanging out with him in Copenhagen.
It's a fucking no-brainer. Okay, all right, let's wrap it up. Thanks a lot, John, and thanks a lot for listening, and make sure you join us for the next one.